The following segment is sponsored by Accenture Federal Services.
With a keystroke, our adversaries can disrupt power or water to a small city, mine troves of Americans' personal data, or steal intellectual property.
That was Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas giving a speech at the Center for Strategic and International Studies on December 5th. A big focus of the administration is protecting critical infrastructure from cyber attacks. Rick Driggers is a former executive at CISA. Rick, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
So when it comes to protecting critical infrastructure, what would you say is lacking in the federal response?
Well, I think on the day, day to day, I think that the government has done a lot of work over the past decade and a half. Clearly, there could be more coordination across the various different departments and agencies that have a critical infrastructure role and responsibility. You've got these 16 sector risk management agencies. 8 of those are in the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. There's another couple that are actually in the Department of Homeland Security. And then you've got the Department of Defense, you've got Health and Human Services, you've got the Department of Energy. So making sure that there's a unified, coordinated effort whenever you want to actually put out guidance to the public sector. And I think that in the past, probably like 4 or 5 years, I think that the government's done a tremendous job in terms of making sure that there's a much more unified and coordinated approach. You see guidance coming out of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency that is coordinated very well with FBI. It's coordinated very well with the National Security Agency and other departments and agencies like the Department of Energy. And they're tri-sealed, and so that guidance is
most critical infrastructure is owned by private companies.
Correct.
And operated by private companies. What do you think the federal government's role should be in regulating and mandating its protection?
Yeah, so there's a couple regulatory authorities that exist with regards to security. Of course, most of the regulatory authorities are around safety and around environment. It's I think some light touch regulation is probably required. We haven't gotten made quite the impact in terms of really the private sector covering down on their particularly their cybersecurity risks. They need to certainly do more, but I think some light touch regulation is probably required.
You've said that previously that there's a cultural divide between people running the IT networks, which are the internal, and the operations networks. Explain the difference between those two, and what's the root of that cultural divide?
Sure. So when everybody thinks about technology, they think about the traditional information technology like computers and laptops and those networked equipment that really protects data, right? And then you've got the operational technology, which are really those control systems that impact the physical environment. And so normally the operational technology environment doesn't have a whole lot of visibility on the chief information officer side of the house. And so what I think we are trying to do, at least people that do my type of work in operational technology, is bring those two domains together. Not integrated, but in alignment, right? And so there's a lot of talk about IT, OT, convergence. And I like to talk about alignment on security outcomes, security goals. And you're going to do that differently in IT than you do in OT. OT is going to take longer to do. It's going to be harder. And you've got to be a lot more patient with regards to how you set up your security apparatus in the operational technology.
What's the solution, though, of bridging that gap? How do you bring those two together? How do you align, as you say?
Well, I think you align by making sure that, at least on the IT side of the house, that you're taking into consideration the concerns that they have predominantly on operational technology, and that is safety, reliability, and availability of operations, right? Those critical operations, because that's how the private sector makes money, by producing things and or materials. And so I think that you've got to get these teams together to understand basically what type of security outcomes, what type of security goals they can all reach and move forward together with.
And I can't let you go until I ask you about jobs, because there are a lot of cybersecurity jobs in this country that are vacant. I've heard 700,000 was the latest I heard. What impact is that having, and what's the solution?
Yeah, well, what's the solution? I wish I knew the solution. I think that, look, I referred to this as a national security risk when I was in the government. I still think it is today. I think we need a much more coordinated, unified approach. There is nobody in the federal government that is in charge of building a workforce for America, and everybody's kind of doing their own thing. You've got all of these programs to build out a workforce, to be able to recruit from not only just colleges, but out of high school to give folks a job. I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I think that there definitely needs to be more coordination across the federal government. And quite frankly, there's a lot of nonprofits that are doing this work as well. So there could be a lot of, I think it takes the private sector to kind of stand up with the government and kind of take the lead on this.
All right, Rick, thanks very much for coming in the program.
Thank you.
The previous segment was sponsored by Accenture Federal Services.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.